teachings about monopolies and companies. It was written by William and Orphan, and it was published by the Center for Strategic Education. The internet is electronic advancement of riches and a truly revolutionary change in the way information flows in our society. Yet, as a research tool, the internet is not everything. It is not comprehensive nor widely durable, and it is by no means selective. What is online is there because someone has placed it there, not because it has been published or because it is deemed important by the expert world. Good and bad information therefore reside together, and what is online is hardly a comprehensive reflection of what there is. In starting any research project, the number one task is identifying the most relevant resource likely to produce the required information. Students and other internet enthusiasts may think that if it's not on the internet, it isn't important. Although the internet may be increasingly huge and the best finding aid for a paper resource, it is not the only resource. Many internet books and magazines speak of the old way and the net way to do things and find information. But no researcher should consider the push of the internet as superior to the pool of research and inquiry which seeks out data needed to answer a question rather than just using available data. The internet cannot replace traditional data collection as a means to understand an issue comprehensively. With that said, the internet has become a superior source for certain types of information. From official government resources to the world of international institutions to academic research centers, departments, professors, and libraries. It is clear that the internet has become the place to communicate and debate. Every institution and special interest has a website, and even when it comes to doing things the old way, people can be found for interviews using online search resources. Even biographies and obituaries can be searched more efficiently online. While one cannot overemphasize the importance of discipline and a clear research agenda in using the internet, part of its joy is discovering truly unique resources. Where else could one quickly find out what positions of the heads of Bolivia or suburban government and read their own propaganda and views firsthand? How would someone find a street map of Baghdad any other place than online, or the text of a recent speech by President Clinton? One may argue that the web is only relevant for the instant and contemporary, but it has also required surprising depth and breadth, considering its use. Historical documents, even the full text of historic books, are online from around the world, and growth and depth of material shows no signs of slowing. Though the World Wide Web itself tends to have little historical meaning, websites dealing with all aspects of history, politics, regional and country studies, and science and technology have sprung up, and each of these is slowly building its own child. And in areas by far favoring paper, where there has been little digitization, such as military history, the internet is quickly becoming a vital resource. The finding aids of travel collections are increasingly online, while older documents are increasingly being converted for online learning. In one area in particular, the internet has assumed a leadership role, that of accessing the world of gray literature. Gray literature referring to those studies, position papers, reports, proceedings, etc., that are not books or periodicals, neatly cataloged by traditional libraries. It is the output and the lifeblood of government and public policy institutions and actors. Before the web, libraries never really found a satisfactory method to catalog, let alone collect gray matter. Now it is freely available and virtually circulating via the internet. There is so much and so much more is being added every day from all corners of the globe that some words of warning are ignored. Although the internet offers a wide selection of information, it may not always be the most accurate or complete. The main goal of the web is to provide a service rather than perfection, which could otherwise be offered by the books that are often overlooked during research. Because of the little extra time that it takes to look up rather than type in the object of your research. With this in mind, understand that although the internet is a faster, more convenient method of research, it's not the only way. What makes a criminal a criminal? Some might say that a criminal is anyone that acts against the law, while others might say a criminal is anyone who acts against the law with the wrong intentions in mind. What is a crime? Is holding a monopoly against rival businesses a crime? How about forcing people to pay for things they can't afford? King Charles I had bad intentions when committing each of those things we call crimes. Therefore, he is a criminal. Everyone knew, but no one stopped him. I chose this piece because one of the crimes that King Charles committed was allowing people to hold monopolies only if they paid him, which is relative to my topic, monopolies within companies. Now, let us head over to England to explore the endowments of King Charles I and A Child's History of England by Charles Dickens. Baby Charles became King Charles I at the 25th year of his age. Unlike his father, he was usually admirable in his private character and grave and dignified in his bearing. Unlike his father, he had monstrously exaggerated notions of the rights of a king, was evasive and not to be trusted. If his word could have been relied upon, history might have had a different end. Now you ought to understand that King Charles I, of his own determination to be a high and mighty king, not to be called to according to anybody, and urged on by his queen besides, deliberately put his parliament down just to put himself up. You're also to understand, even pursuit of this wrong idea, enough in itself to have ruined anybody, never took a straight course, but always took a crooked path. He was bent upon war with Spain, though neither the House of Commons nor the people were quite clear as to the justice of that war. Now they began to think a little more about the story of the Spanish marriage, but they rushed into it hotly, raised money by illegal means to meet its expenses, and accounted a miserable failure at Cadiz. In the very first year of his reign, and the expedition to Cadiz had been made in the hope of plunder. But as it was successful, it was necessary to get a grant of money from the parliament when they met. And no very complying human. The king told them to make haste, to let him have it, or it would be worse for themselves. Not more complying human by this, they impeached the king's favorite thing of Buckingham as the cause, which he undoubtedly was, of many great grievances and wrongs. The king, to save him, dissolved the parliament without getting the money he wanted. And when the lords employed him to consider and grant a little delay, he replied, no, not 1 minute. He began to raise money for himself by the following means, among others. He levied certain duties called tonnage and pawnage, but had not been granted by the parliament, and could lawfully be levied by no other powers called upon the seaport towns to furnish and to pay all the costs for months of a fleet of armed ships. He required the people to lend him large sums of money, and if they refused, they were sent to prison. 5 gentlemen named Sir Thomas Donald, John Corbett, Walter Earl, John Hevingham, Edward Hampden, for refusing, were taken up by a warrant of the Privy Council and were sent to prison without any cause, but the pleasure being stated for their imprisonment. Then the question came solemnly tried whether this was not a violation of Magna Charta, encroachment by the king on the highest rights of the English people. Lawyers contended no, because to encroach upon the rights of the people would be to do wrong, and the king could do no wrong. Accommodating judges decided in favor of this wicked nonsense, and this was a fatal division between the king and the people. And the money part of the putting down of the people's liberties that was equally gentle, as some will tell you, as I think equally alarming. He gave those duties the tonnage and pawnage and increased them as he saw fit. He granted monopolies to companies of merchants when they paying him for them. Notwithstanding the great companies he had for years and years been made on the subject of monopolies. He fined the people for disregarding proclamations issued by his fellowship in direct violation of law. He revived detested forest laws and took private property to himself. Above all, he determined to have what was called ship money. That is money for the support of the fleet, not only from the seaports, but from the counties of England. Having found out that in some ancient time or another, the counties paid it. For 12 long years, steadily pursuing his design of putting himself up and putting the people down, the king called no parliament and ruled without one. The 12,000 volumes were written in his praise. Good many have been. It would still remain a fact, impossible to be denied, that for 12 years, King Charles I reigned in England, unlawfully, despotically seized upon his subjects' goods and money at his own pleasure, punished according to his unbridled will all who ventured to oppose him. The fashion with some people to think that the king's career was cut short. I must say myself that I think he ran it pretty long. But again, you are always to remember that 12 years during which the king had his own willful way had gone before, and nothing can make the times what they might, could, would, or should have been if those 12 years had ever rolled around. Bigger is better, or is it? Monopolies usually involve a large and extremely popular corporation or business that outnumbers its smaller competitors. The large companies can sometimes end an entire business without so much as a care for the newly unemployed and bankrupt. Monopolies come about after a previously small company has increased, not only in size but in business. They have expanded and therefore feel a need to forget their past and their fellow business partners who also wish to grow, but may never be given the opportunity. Monopolies have become rather popular in our society. Take the case of Baltimore Gas and Electric. It is hard, rather impossible, to find a second electric company in Baltimore. It may seem less complicated, but no one hears the business that failed behind its monopoly. The business which was never given a chance to succeed. The business which lost money, customers, and popularity. Why not say that companies that have monopolies are just sell-offs to the business partners they once had? I think that bigger is not always better, and sometimes we need to have a smaller company to increase our society and its money. Therefore, I think monopolies are wrong. Oh, that was it. Good afternoon, everyone. Voices for Choices is a campaign that puts special interests against special interests. It is choreographed by long-distance telephone service providers and other smaller competitors. They have joined forces to stop the major takeover of the large local phone companies. You may have seen a commercial on television that depicts the nation's four largest local phone companies, which are Verizon Communications, SBC Communications Incorporated, Quest Communications International Incorporated, and Bell Cell Corporation. As four businessmen seated around a dinette table, eating their turkey dinner, as the narrator warns against these companies taking over all areas of communication. Similarly to what has happened with Baltimore's Gas and Electric Company. Baltimore's Gas and Electric Company has pushed out any possibility for competition. They are Baltimore's major source of gas and electricity, and they don't leave much room for any other business to succeed. The commercial is centered towards the battle over a bill, which will allow the large local phone companies to sell high-speed access to the internet without restrictions or meeting certain conditions which are required by law. The process of regulating telecommunications began in the 1960s when the federal government began investigating the monopoly of the American Telephone and Telegraph Company, which ultimately led to the breakup of AT&T into smaller companies. The companies who will be affected by the bill known as H.R. 1542, entitled the Internet Freedom and Broadband Development Act of 2001, are already suffering also counteract the past laws that requires large companies to lease space on their network to their competition. It is already hard enough for small competitors to contend with these major corporations, and now they are being pushed out of the market completely for reasons that are against their own control. Monopolies are bad for the entire society. Therefore, in order to stop the situation from escalating further, we have an obligation to prevent this bill from being passed. If that means promoting anti-monopolizing commercials and rallying outside of our legislators' offices before the final decision, then this is what we must do. We as a society must spread the word by producing flyers, through telephone conversations, and by sending emails. Because if we don't, then the telephone companies will lose profit and possibly lose their entire business. This also means that people will be out of jobs and our government will dish out more money to pay for unemployment and probably social services. We will once again have a domineering company ruling over our business while making millions, when our fellow neighbors have been driven to poverty. If we can stop this bill, then no one will lose. The largest companies will still make millions without forfeiting our local companies' businesses. There's no need for this bill. It will only spark more confusion. We do not need more novices on against Does business have too much power in American politics? You may think yes, but without business, where would American politics be? Many people decide to tangle in politics because of the business involved. And once they begin to gain the support of people, they expand and expand until they leave no room for their fellow business endeavors. Business plays a big part in politics because we the people use business so often. Therefore, how can we say that business has too much power? They do not have much. They do not have power if they are not backed by the society. Our government only supports what the society wants. And if we choose to have big businesses, then of course it will push into American politics. Some businesses often go too far and extend so far that other businesses are never given a chance to succeed. This shows that sometimes our government is so heavily concerned with business, they forget the other prospects. But is it their fault? I say no. It's everyone's fault. Everyone in society. In conclusion, businesses may have too much power in American politics, but you can't blame our government. Blame